Have you ever worked really hard on something and thought it was going to be amazing just to realize that you'd made more than a few mistakes? Well, if you want to find out about the mistakes I made with my garden beds and how I plan to fix them, stay tuned. YouTube, I'm Amy of Hummingbird Hill. Welcome back to my garden. As you can see, we've got some snow on the ground, some donkeys in the background, and somewhere around here there's a cat or two who will probably be trying to trip me while I'm filming this. I actually filmed this video a couple of weeks ago just looking to make sure a cat's not there and didn't have the sound working right. Since this is my second video, I suppose it's okay to make a few mistakes, right? At least I hope so. My mom watched my last video and she said, "Well, you were a little bit stiff, but you were better than the first time I saw your draft." Thanks, Mom. She was totally right, though. So I'm gonna see if I can relax into this and we'll just talk a little bit about the garden, because that's, after all, why I'm here. If you didn't watch that last video that was stiff, and perhaps I should have edited a few more times, I'll link it down below so that you can check it out and say hi. Right now, let's just get started with the garden, my beds, and what I need to fix. So, I'm gonna flip you around here so that you can see the other side. If I can find the right button. Where's the button? Ooh. All right, there. Ooh, there's the barn. Found the button. Took me a second. So my garden beds are 3x6. They have a 2x4 on top as kind of a cap, which if the snow weren't here, you could see the lovely mitered edges. Okay, they're not super lovely, but they're the first time I mitered, so I was kind of proud of them. That said, they look pretty good, right? They're garden beds, they grew things, but I made some mistakes when I made them. So these long sides of the bed face east and west. The short sides face north and south. Now, if I had put the long sides of the bed, north and south, the more of the crops would have gotten sun through the day as the sun moved overhead. So when I discovered that, I was like, all right, I can totally fix that. I'll just flip the beds around in the fall, no big deal. Well, there's kind of a problem with that. And let me take you on a quick little tour of the bed such as they are so you can see. So in this bed, you can see there are some onions, some remains of some tomatoes, and a lot of snow at the moment. So okay, great, I got one bed with some onions in it. This bed is my asparagus bed, and I probably should have trimmed the ferns, but they're there. I need to actually get them trimmed before spring really comes. Doesn't look like it's coming soon with this snow in the area, but I know some of you have been socked in with so much snow that this is nothing. As you can see, this bed has some garlic and some more onions. In the summer, this was my Walla Walla sweet bed, and those two sets of onions did not decide to come up in the summer. They decided to start coming up in the fall, so here we are. All right, we've got this bed over here, which has some purple kohlrabi, the only one of my seeds that I started inside that lasted out here. Well, I had a pak choi down in the weedy end of the garden, but Basil Bell Boop Boops, the vegetable thief, stole it. I'll introduce you to her later. In any case, there are some more onions here and some more brassicas down here. This bed was my lettuce bed in the summer, but as you can see, it is close to the fence, which now has a board across it, because those rascals over there realized that they could reach the tasty lettuce and ate about half of the bed, at least as much as they could reach. This board so far has stopped them. It is not attractive, but it works for the moment. Coming over here, this is what was my cauliflower bed. It had some beets in it, it had some radishes in it, it had some cucumbers in it. It also had, after all of those were done, it had some peas and beans, and right now down at this end you can see it has some onions under the snow. This is my artichoke that has been coming back for 5 or 6 years now. There's also somewhere in the ground down here one of the asparagus we planted in the weedy section that still keeps coming up, even though there is one of my mistakes on the ground, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So here we have some more brassicas. This was peppers and eggplants and snap peas. and they grew up past the top of those poles. They were kind of serious this summer. There you go. Again, something in the beds. And over here, this was brassicas and carrots and some, let's see what else was in here. Some lettuces. And right now, as you can see, there is brassica there, some onions there, some garlic there, and some garlic there. Okay, so here we go. The last bed, as you can see, still has some dinosaur kale in it, which I need to pick a lot of it. It just kind of kept going, and I did not pick enough this winter. And then it still has some Brussels sprouts, which until recently I was still picking off of, but I really just need to pick them because they're starting to smell. I was going to let them decompose in place, add some nutrients to the soil, but brassicas are really stinky when they decompose, so I'm probably not going to do that. So, there you go. 8 beds, no problem. I was going to flip them in the fall. Oh, wait. The problem is, every single bed has something in it. That's right. I said every single bed has something in it, which wouldn't be a problem if I didn't want to move the beds. And in fact, I thought I was going to move them last fall until I took a look and realized, ooh, yeah, that's going to be problematic. So if I had placed the beds with their long side facing south, more of the crops would have gotten sun throughout the day. In fact, I put my tomatoes over here, and on the far end, the tomatoes were slightly stunted because they did not get as much sun as the tomatoes facing south. The tomatoes at the north were blocked for part of the day. Over here, with the, let's see, there you can kind of see it, with the peas in the background on the trellis, it wasn't as bad because I had some squash on the ground, but there was enough space around everything that they still got sun. But still, it's a little more problematic as far as figuring out where to place crops. It will be fine this year. I will make do, but I look forward to next fall when I won't be planting all of the beds. Since this was my first time actually with a winter garden, I've overwintered brassicas before and some onions and some garlic actually, but never really done a full kind of garden for the winter. I really wasn't thinking about, oh yeah, I want to move things, I want to fix things, I want to change things. So that became a little bit problematic in the fall when I was like, oh yeah, about that. There are things in every bed, legitimately. So live and learn, and next fall I have a great project to start with. Sweet Tater Tot is conveniently modeling one of my other problem areas when I place the beds. You see, I placed the beds over weed fabric, and then I put some hog fuel on top. It was brilliant. I loved not having to walk over weeds or slog through mud to pick vegetables in the summer. It was amazing. However, the problem with this weed barrier is that I actually put the bark chips on top. Let me talk to you a little bit about that. So the problem with the weed barrier is not that it's weed barrier, and the problem with the bark dust is not that it's bark dust. It's the fact that I put the bark dust on top of the weed barrier. So this summer was brilliant. I could walk through the aisles. I didn't have to climb over weeds or slog through mud. However, as the season went along, I started seeing more and more weeds collecting in the bark dust. And they were super easy to pull. They weren't fully established, but as their roots work themselves down through the weed barrier, which they do, it becomes more and more of a problem. So this summer I was able to keep on top of it, but there will be more seeds next year, and this will become an increasing problem. Now, if I had just put the weed barrier down and nothing on top of it, that would have been a good solution. It would have kept the weeds down, not given a habitat on top for things to grow in. If I had just put bark chips down and then added more bark chips, kind of like the Ruth Stout method, but just not for growing anything, that would have been fine as well. But one of my other things that I noticed is I have left really wide aisles. I left room between each bed on each end and all around for a wheelbarrow to get through. And when I move the beds, I really don't think I need that much space in the aisles if I have room on either end of the bed and I can get the wheelbarrow in that way. it's not as important to have access all the way around for the wheelbarrow. The beds aren't that big, not such a big deal. So that's something I'll also fix when I flip the beds in the fall. So aside from that, the flipping of the beds is going to be a slight issue because of something else. Now the weed barrier runs underneath every bed, which is not the best thing either. Really, I should have used hardware cloth, that small wire mesh. A lot of people use it to build their tables in greenhouses. That would have helped keep rodents out. It is a country. Yes, we have a mole and a mouse problem. They don't really do much damage to my beds, but I have seen evidence of some holes in the raised beds. So if I put that hardware wire, that hardware cloth, it would have helped. Instead, I have the weed barrier underneath, which really the animals can chew through. So, and the weeds, which really the animals can chew through, and the plants, their roots can't get as deep as they need. Well, the beds are 12 inches, so the roots have a good space to establish, you say. However, there's the problem. Because I was building beds for the first time, I thought, well, pots need drainage, so shouldn't raised beds need drainage? And I put some big rocks at the bottom of every bed. At least I didn't use 3/4 minus, so it'll be a lot easier to pull those rocks out when I flip them. But yeah, that was totally unnecessary. Live and learn, and that's going to be a great workout next fall when I get to scoop all those rocks out of the bed and put them somewhere else. In any case, the combination of the bark chips and the weed barrier, coupled with the placement of the beds, are some of my most major mistakes. Those are easy to fix. I'll be able to make do this winter, but I still need to work on a couple other things. So, since I can't fix my raised beds until next fall, I need to figure out how to deal with the weedy end of the garden right now. Get it ready for this summer's planting. So in my next video, I'm going to be talking about some things I'm going to try in this end of the garden. Might as well experiment because, hey, that's how I learn. And I hope that I will be able to find a solution to all of those weeds that are already happily growing under the snow. I almost forgot to tell you the story of the onions and why there are onions in basically every bed in the garden. You see, last summer, down in the bed on the far end, I planted the most beautiful crop of Walla Walla sweet onions I've ever planted. They were amazing. They grew to be this big, at least some of them did. And so I harvested them and I put them in a dry room in the barn with no light, and I left them to cure. And for about a month, we had the most delicious, the best, the tastiest, the most amazing Walla Walla sweet onions. And then they started to sprout. It was really hot last summer, and the room that I had them in I thought would be a good space for them as far as curing and storage, but it just got too hot. And so I didn't notice them sprouting right away because they were in the barn and I hadn't needed onions for a few days. So I went to grab my onions. I was so sad. And the last thing I wanted to do was throw away the 30 or 40 onions we had left. I mean, really, it was more than half of my onions were still left. So I turned to the internet, which is the place to go when you want to know things in this day and age, and I looked up what to do with sprouted onions. And on a couple of websites, I saw that people had said that if you actually cut off the outsides, you can replant the sprouts. Well, I don't know if this is true or not, but I thought, why not give it a try? After all, my onions are sprouted. I mean, there's nothing I can do about that. They've already sprouted. So I might as well see if I can make something good out of it. Which I don't know if it will work. I will not find out until next summer. But right now, in every bed, there are onions that were from sprouts that are currently either attempting to grow or growing, but only a couple of the sprouts have kind of withered, so I pulled those. The rest seem to be going strong. So we'll see what happens in the summer. Thank you so much for joining me in the garden and in the snow today. Shout out to the Wyatt Life for being the first people ever to put a comment on my YouTube video. Of course, I've only had one video, so there's not really a lot to comment on yet, but even my mom didn't leave a comment. Of course, she doesn't have a YouTube account, so that might explain it. But in any case, shout out to the Wyatt Life. Thank you so much. You should go over and visit their channel. I think there's fishing involved, and fish are delicious, so you should go check them out and leave them a comment. Say hi to them. You should leave me a comment too down below. That's where you leave the comments. You should also subscribe to hear more of me working on being not so stiff in the garden and perhaps not talking so quickly. I feel like I'm talking quickly today. We'll see how that goes in editing. In any case, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you'll come over again so we can do some more growing together. Bye, YouTube! Just to be nice. Oh, Jack. This is Jack. He's a kisser face. Yes, you are. Boys, be nice. Boys. Yes, you want to say hello? No, boys. I don't have treats. About the cold weather is I get to wear a hat with a pom-pom. I think everyone should get to wear hats with pom-poms more often. I'm just saying.